Previously on Dystropia, we've had crime, death, racism, food. Yeah, we've had so much stuff, and this episode is Cliffhangers.
So we're going to talk about, and cut it there.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on our 1 year.
We are coming up on our 1 year, actually.
So this is episode 24.
Mm-hmm.
And we did one flashback episode.
Yes.
Where we basically just did like a little kind of synopsis of the first few episodes. For people who are like coming in new, people might discover the channel and they're like, I don't know if I'm going to want to watch this or if we're going to listen to this, but we're watching listen to the first three, kind of like the best of those first three, can kind of give them a flavour of like what we do and if they're interested. So the next, not this one, but the next one will be 1 year.
That's right.
So
one of us will die at the end of this episode. Stay tuned to find out who. So some people are, they're connoisseurs of different alcohols. They're sommeliers or they're whiskey tasters or something like that. I think at this stage I can say I'm a connoisseur of hangovers, because there's been a few episodes now where I've had to start at the very start and qualify that I'm very, very hungover.
To be fair, we did one episode the morning after your birthday and you were still
Yeah, we had to delay this by an hour because I woke up drunk in someone else's house and I had to come back home and get sorted. But I drank nothing but white wine yesterday just to see what the hangover will be like today, and it's sharp. It is a sharp hangover. It's man, it cuts right to the point. It's not low level hum, no noise or anything like that. It's a real, it's a stiletto spike. I'm telling you.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay then.
Right.
Yeah. Do you reckon there was more wars during the Middle Ages? Because all the kings just used to drink wine all day, and they wake up in the morning and they're like, "Your Lordship, Sir Henry has said he can't make it to the ball." Well, fuck Sir Henry, we're going to war.
I feel like I've got a lance through my fucking eyeball.
It's just like, Yeah. Whereas if they had to be an all on something that's just like, I've always found rum to be kind of a mild hangover.
Yeah.
If I even get one, like I can drink like Morgan's and I wake up the next day and it's just kind of like, usually because I've been in a bar and I've been moving around and chatting to people and all the rest. I wake up the next day, my legs are just kind of tired. And other than that, I'm like, I'm just kind of tired. I don't want to do much today. But other than that, I'm fine. There's no cloudiness. There's no there's no debilitating headache or anything like that or nausea. And it's like if everybody had been on rum, they would have been just like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's grand. It's grand.
I do like the Waterford.
I don't know.
There's a Waterford Whisperer headline, which is just 90% of Irish people get all their exercise while drunk. Like, I could see it.
Yeah, I could definitely believe that.
Yeah.
Currently heading for the most obese nation in Europe.
Oh, we know. Fantastic.
It's gone down a bit since I left, but percentages are still up.
I love that the water level went down a little bit as you left. It's just the island. Terrible.
Yeah. So we're talking about cliffhangers, good ones, bad ones, all that. Because the next episode will be the start of season 1, or season 2.
Yes.
We
go mathematically. This is season 0. So.
Yes, actually, yeah. Computer maths. So just kind of like good and bad examples of cliffhangers and what you've noticed about it. I'm sure Jonny has some notable tropables. I actually really love this section now because Jonny sprung it on us one episode without telling me it. And it just kind of comes up now and I'm like, sure, go ahead. What have you got, Jonny?
So
we'll start on film.
For film, my notable tropable on that. It's cliffhangers are a weird one because there's a whole series of tropes that go with them.
Yes.
So there's very good cliffhangers where they keep you going to the next episode and it works really well. The notable tropables for film, I think in the movie Misery, Annie Wilkes put it best when she was saying about the old film serials used to have the fake out, the cliffhanger fake out. And she was saying how Rocket Man would be in the car and the doors are welded shut and he's driving off a cliff and you would actually see him go off the cliff. And she was like, next week, was I in that cinema? You bet your ass I was. Or she wouldn't say ass, actually, Annie Wilkes. And
you bet your boots.
You bet your boots I was. And she's like, she's in there. But then at the last minute, he'd swerve and wouldn't go off the cliff. And she'd stand up and go, are you all insane? Do you have amnesia? He wasn't in the car. The car went off the Cock-a-Doodle cliff. Where they would show you something clearly happening. But then in an age before Netflix and before everybody being able to rewatch stuff online and having to wait a week and not remembering what would have happened, they can just get away with doing whatever they want. I like it in the
some of them were a month and stuff like
yes.
that. Yeah.
I liked it in The Simpsons where they had the radioactive man and it actually shows the Earth explode. It's like, kaboom! It's like from the 1960s radioactive man. It's like, how will he get out of this one? And it's an actual shot of the Earth exploding. For movies, there's one that it's very difficult with a movie, obviously, because a cliffhanger implies a serial, implies that like something has to come after it. There has been movies where there's a shot of something happening to somebody, and then cut away and then cut back to it. But in terms of cliffhanger endings, they have the really obvious trope that comes to everyone's mind is the Bolivian army ending, which is the Butch Cassidy one, which in my mind isn't just a cliffhanger because you kind of, for a lot of these, for Thelma and Louise and stuff, you kind of know what happened. It's implied very much what happened.
Yeah, but it's that whole, it's meant to be like an urban legend.
Yeah.
Or it's a story told by friends around a campfire type thing. It's like, yeah, and then they rode off into the sunset. Or it's that type of thing where it's like, we don't have to define this. We've told you the interesting part of the story, and that's it. Like,
and it honestly, if they had brought out a Butch Cassidy 2, like just somehow, it would have been such a fun movie to watch them get themselves out of that. The Italian Job, I think, is the best one though. The Italian Job is literally them hanging off a cliff. The bus goes off the edge. Is teetering.
That's where the title comes from, is right?
It predates. It comes from the old film serials, and it would usually end with somebody going off a cliff or somebody hanging off a cliff. So it's not just the Italian Job. It is older than television, older than all the kind of TV shows and soap operas that you see.
So it's early days of cinema.
Early days of cinema, and it would be Rocket Man or someone actually doing that. But the just for the literalness of it, just for the I don't know, that's a word. Just for the like ridiculousness of it, the cliffhanger scene at the end of the Italian Job, where they're teetering on the bus and it's right on the edge and it's kind of going up and down, and they've all the gold down one end and all the lads down the other end trying to seesaw it a little bit, and one of the lads just goes, "Hang on, lads, I've got an idea," and then he starts.
Isn't it Michael Caine?
Yeah.
Like, "Hang on, lads, I've got an idea,"
and he starts like, inching his way down the bus, and everyone's looking at him going, "What are you doing?" And then it ends on that scene. It's so good. That's kind of a brief rundown of it, but there's ones I've seen where characters gun to their head, cuts away and cuts back later, but I don't think there's enough time in a movie to. I think a cliffhanger, you have to go away from it. You kind of have to end the episode. The Killing was really good for it because the music would start towards the end of the episode, and it's not so much a cliffhanger, but you want there to be more of The Killing. Just it's such a good show. And as that drums start and all the music starts, you be kind of freaking out, going, no, you have to tell me more.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, it's how it's treated in TV is very different to the other two mediums I found. But yeah, like just for like in film. So, and this kind of plays into, like I have kind of two examples and the two opposite sides of the coin. Actually, film's kind of the only place I can think of where there's specifically two different versions of it.
Right.
So normally what happens in TV is they're a quarter or halfway through their season and they find out, you're getting renewed for the next one. You know what I mean? And some serials, they shoot everything in one go, like the shorter 10 episode seasons, like True Detective, or anything like that, where it's like it's 10-hour long episodes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Netflix stuff is done like that, where it's like here's 10-hour long or 12-hour longs and that's it. Whereas when they're shooting on like a 26 episode schedule, it's obviously not all done at once. What they do is they'll, like, when episode 1 is airing, they're filming episode 12.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And or maybe less, depending on the turnaround on the thing. Different companies and different countries do things at different speeds. Like Australian TV is known for being really fast turnaround.
Right.
Their TV industry is like super fast on how fast they can churn out episodes and stuff. But normally they're halfway through and they're told, yes, there is you do get next season. They're like, cool, we'll do a cliffhanger. We'll get the cliffhanger going. And whereas with film and gaming, they make the first one and they have to make it a self-contained story, but they always try and leave themselves a little bit of leeway that if it is well enough received, they can go further. They don't have the foreknowledge. And then what happens is that you get into the problem of the middle child, because it's never just a second film; it's always a trilogy.
Yep.
And the second one always has the issue of not having a proper start or ending. And then you get into the third one actually will wrap the whole thing up.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So like one that I just kind of wanted to point out was like in terms of film. Are you finished with your notable tropable?
I am. That's what happens.
So just going like with film, kind of the best example I can cite, and it is something we've talked about extensively before, so I'll just touch on it briefly. Is the Batman Nolan trilogy. So when they make the first one, the first film is a self-contained origin story, and yes, they did have some inclination of, if this is well received, we will keep going, because it's a Warner Brothers property, and it's such a big property that they were like, yeah, we know we want to make more of these, but it has to get well received to begin with to make the return of investment worth it. And then they wrap up the whole story, so it could have just been the first film and nothing else, and that would have been fine, because Batman is such a well-known character that they could have just gone, that's it, that's just our origin story, we didn't want to tell any more. If it underperformed, they could have gone, no, we just wanted to do it for one, that was it. It's just about telling his origins and letting people kind of see because it's never really been done, the origin in the film before, and that would have been fine. But then they just have the little reference at the end with the Joker card.
Yeah, that was nice.
And you're like, okay, cool, because even if they didn't continue, a lot of like anybody who's familiar with Batman would have straight away gone, that's cool, that's a nice little nod, but they decided not to do any more, that's great. Then they do decide to do more, but because the film was really well received, it was really well done, and people are like, great, I'm excited. And when they get to the end of The Dark Knight, again you have that whole thing of, we've wrapped up our storyline, but then we've wrapped up our storyline in such a way that there will be consequences for how these characters are affected moving forward, if it moves forward. And that's where you have Two-Face getting killed, you have Batman getting shot and getting chased, and the police thinking he's the bad guy. And again, they could have left it at that, and it would have been fine. It would have been a case of like, oh, okay, so he's seen as the villain now, and so okay, that's cool. And then that just feeds into the whole mythos of Batman. And then they actually went and did the third one, and like they were able to pick up on that and incorporate it correctly. I think that's just like it shows how good the Nolan brothers were at writing that story arc, where they were able to consistently leave the series at a point where like at any point they could have stopped.
Yeah.
That's it, we're done. Whereas like I said, the middle child of trilogies usually has the issue of it just kind of stops.
Yeah.
And you're like, is that fucking it? Like, you know what I mean? They build up to the big moment, and you're like, I'm sorry, is that what we're doing here?
I got that.
Is that it? Like,
I got that with every single Hobbit movie. We went to see all the Hobbit movies, and like at the end of every single one of them, I was like, I don't understand what's happening. There's one where I think I went to see one of them with my mum, and she'd read the books, and it was getting closer and closer to the end, and she just looked at me at one point and goes, "Is there a dragon in this movie?" and I was like, "Not this one." And she's like, "There's a dragon on the cover of the book. It's about a guy and a dragon. There's a dragon in this movie, right?" I was like, "No, it's the first one. They don't get there yet. I think they have to go to that town first." It's like, okay, what? How dare you? That's ridiculous. Like, that thing of trying to just really, really draw out something that you know there's going to be a dragon. You're going to get to the dragon, but that's 2 movies away, so don't worry about it yet.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, to be fair, speaking of Australian TV production, it's kind of their fault. Ultimately, it's the Australian screenworkers' fault that film that The Hobbit was turned into an abysmal trilogy.
Australian or Kiwi?
No, Australian.
Was it? Okay.
So this is the thing. So originally, Peter Jackson went and negotiated a 2-film deal that he would produce, but he didn't want to direct it.
It's supposed to be.
And he was like, I want Guillermo
del Toro, yeah, of course.
GDT, the big imagination man himself.
Yep.
And I think it would have been great because he wanted it set in the same world, but he wanted Guillermo's style. I think he wanted to have that just slightly different, because Guillermo's stuff, even when he does like heavy amounts of CG, it always feels really tactile.
That's true.
Compared to a lot of other stuff, it's like even in Hellboy 2 when he fights the plant elemental, because it's all moss, you have that kind of texture to the whole thing. Like, he's always really good at doing
visceral.
that. Yeah, and it's just it's always like you can imagine touching the stuff that he makes. You know what I mean? It's always very kind of like, okay, I know what that is.
Honestly, when I see Peter Jackson do good examples of that, I actually do now think that he's watching Guillermo del Toro and like kind of cribbing a little bit from it, where he has a creature that, like, when their guts spill out when they're cut or something, I'm looking at it going, yeah, that is 100% a Del Toro move.
Yeah. So they negotiated that, and originally it was just going to be the one film, and the studio New Line were constantly going, no, 3 films, 3 films, 3 films. We want another trilogy. And he's like, it's not a trilogy, it's a fucking one book. Like, and they eventually compromised on 2. And Del Toro was like, fine, I'll do 2. And they were due to start filming in New Zealand. And the Australian Screen Workers Guild start kicking up shit because they're like, you're not including us. And they're like, well, why the fuck would we include you? You're in a different country.
Yeah.
But this caused a massive amount of hassle because their argument is that, like, no, you're purposely avoiding us. You're going to blah, blah. It was all this bullshit.
Yeah.
And basically that delayed filming to the point where Del Toro had other commitments, so he had to pull out, which meant the entire contract had to be renegotiated with the studio.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's when I went to 3 films. Now I have a feeling, and I don't know for certain one way or the other, but I have a feeling that Peter Jackson was so pissed off dealing with the studio at that point, because bear in mind they fucked him over on DVD sales.
Right.
It took something like 9 years before he saw a single cent in profit from the sales of the extended cuts.
That's insane.
Right? Because they kept on, they kept on trying to do it at Hollywood Mats. It didn't make any money, and he was like, "Fuck you, it didn't make any money." And basically, like, he, they wanted to make more. They wanted to do the Hobbit trilogy sooner, and he was like, "Nope. Well, you fucking pay me." Like, and then they were like, "We'll get someone else to do it," and pretty much every other director went, "Nope, pay him." Because they were like, if you'll do it to him, you'll do it to us, so we're not going to do it.
Yep.
And part of, like, some of the visual stuff was co-licensed with, like, Weta had the license, not because Weta had to make the props. There was something that they had to get licensed specifically.
Right.
So they could actually tie up production if they weren't included. So there was this whole thing. So I reckon he was just so sick of dealing with them that they went 3 films. He went, fine, whatever. And they went, and the orcs should show up with a giant burrowing worm. And he went, cool, I don't care.
Yeah.
I genuinely think every bad decision in that, because considering how good the first one was,
the
first trilogy, how well crafted, how dedicated to the story, the source, and all that it was, I have a feeling the second trilogy was the assistant director's fault. But a lot of people wonder, like, okay, you've got a director, you've got an assistant director. An assistant director doesn't direct anything. The assistant director is someone put there by the producers. The producers are the people who invest money in film. The assistant director is the person set there by the producers to basically say, like, no, you can't spend our money that way, or yes, we insist that you have this in the film because such and such a producer wants it. And I reckon every time the assistant producer opens his mouth, Peter Jackson's doing whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. Here's
just my feeling on it.
Here's a GoPro Red, man. Just there's Legolas, I guess. I suppose he's in this. I guess just go film him. Just go do whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and it, like the third film was probably the worst of the 3.
Yeah. I came out of that. Was that the 5 Armies? That the third one?
Yeah, this is the one that we went to see for the Christmas party.
And I remember turning to people afterwards and going, "The 5 Armies." And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Name them." And they're like, "Well, there was elves and dwarves and orcs and maybe goblins are separate." He's like, "Do the birds count as one army?" He's like, "Maybe
they do in the books.
Maybe there were two dwarven armies." I was like, "So you don't know who the 5 armies were?" Like, "No." I was like, "It's not a good movie, was it?" They're like, "No."
Well, that was the thing. I remember we came out and we were rocking the road. So for anyone watching, we went to see this. We went to see this for the Christmas party in the game studio that I used to work with, working with Johnny. Johnny's still there. Because every year the Christmas party would always be whatever the big cinema release. We'd go and see that, and then we go to a bar afterwards.
I liked Rogue One, actually. That we saw that was last year or the year before. It's a reverse cliffhanger of a movie where they basically take something from the start of another movie and try to build an entire prefix to it as a movie.
Yeah. But I remember we went to see it. There was 22 of us or 21 of us went to see it. One of the lads fell asleep during it directly behind me. Everybody was just sitting there with this kind of look on their face of what the fuck is this shit. And we came out, and one of the guys we were with turned around and went, our CEO actually went, "I really like that," and everyone else went, "What?" And he was like, "Wow, I really like that," and everyone was like, "No, it was shit." And he was like, "Why?" And then they're like, and like,
"Why?"
It really annoyed me. I was like,
a bunch of 21 nerds cracking their knuckles. "I'll tell you."
Yeah, it's like you really picked the wrong crowd to say that to. But then he turns around and he was like, "What was the problem?" And I was like, "They had a giant burrowing worm, yeah." And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, and they showed up with the intention of getting into the mountain hole, yeah? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, why the fuck didn't they burrow inside it? And he was like, yeah, it's a fair point. It's like, if you're going to shy Halud all the way up to the thing, kick the door down.
Yeah.
Just do it and get it over with. Like, but anyway, just to say like that, yeah, I think that one felt like that he just started going, yeah, I don't care. Because he just wanted his paycheck at that point.
Yeah,
After being dicked
absolutely.
over with him so much in 2 rounds of fighting with negotiations, and he's just like, no, I'm not arsed. I'm not arsed. If you want to fuck this up, you think you have the great idea, cool. We're going to give you the great idea. And he every time they said it, he went, yep, sure. And they came out, and everyone, that was kind of shit. And he went, see?
Yeah.
So that's just my own inclination on it. Like, the other one I just wanted to mention though, like, so yeah, the Batman series I think is really well done, and it's really well structured in that sense. It's a really good example of storytelling while leaving yourself that little bit of a back door. Because, like I said, the majority of films, if they're hoping to start a franchise, they always have the little nod that they can kind of go, this is a thread we can pull on and unravel a new story. And then when they go to once they've been told you got a trilogy, then they go and the second one will have a huge cliffhanger because they're like, oh, isn't it great? And then it's like, it's a really disappointing experience because people are sitting there going, I have to wait another 2 years for this next film. This is shit.
Yep.
At least with TV series, it's like the TV series wraps up in May, and you're it's back in September, and you're like, oh, cool, I can't wait to see that because it's a couple of months doesn't feel that bad. But you're like, years, fuck you. And the one that I kind of and like a bad example, a good demonstration, but a bad example of that
Right.
is the Matrix trilogy, because they made the first one and they had no knowledge that they were going to get a sequel, or a trilogy out of it. And that's why they had that whole thing where he's like, I don't know what happens next, but I'm coming.
Yeah.
And he hangs up the phone and flies and does a Superman thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, that's a really awesome end to that film. And I remember going to see that film and going, this is fucking baller. And then when you go the second one, and everyone knew going into it, and there's a third one coming, and the second one has that kind of, like everything's just left hanging, and it's not a cliffhanger because you're just kind of like,
well,
right.
The first one is kind of basically saying all the rules have changed. Like, this is that moment isn't. If it wasn't a cliffhanger, if they never got the other movies, that point is like everything's changed now. Like, this is such a beautiful moment, and by not showing you, it reinforces it because it's left in your mind. But yeah, it is a again, as you say, a really good example or a good demonstration of it.
Yeah, and it's like the one that kind of gets on my tits lately. When it started off, it was cute, but it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe with their
I forgot about that.
stupid amounts of post-credit stuff.
Yeah.
So I get that they do the whole thing where they go up to a certain point and they go, that's it, that's our self-contained story.
Yeah.
We had a start, middle, and end. We introduce familiar character, or if it's an origin one, it's like, oh yeah, someone who you know in name, and this is how they become the good guy or the bad guy. And then if it's a sequel, they kind of go, here's the character that you know and love, here's the bad guy, here's their conflict, here's resolution, character grows.
I hate the
and
Marvel.
That's fine.
I hate the Marvel universe so much.
It's the post-credit stuff.
Really getting to hate it. It's that post-credit stuff. Whatever movie it was, where it was like, what if Doctor Strange met Thor? It's like such pandering. You're like, what if they kissed? Like,
yeah, but like the thing is that actually turns out to be one of the best scenes in that film.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Thor Ragnarok is an amazing film. It's
you
it's
liked
a
it more
really
than me.
good, funny film. I just think it's very funny, and I like Taika Waititi, so I like his sense of humor, and I like the stuff that he does. So I'm like, yeah, this is great. My issue with the post-credit scene is that the fact that it was initially done as a case of, look, we've got the self-contained Iron Man film, and we've done the Hulk film, and the Hulk was all right. It made its money back, but it didn't make enough of a margin to be considered profitable because you have to pay whatever. And then they're like, but we'd like to keep going with this. This is kind of our idea. We'll do a few origins, and if enough of them stick, then we can get an Avengers film. So they do that little post-credits thing, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's actually nice and interesting. I like that. I like the way they tied those two together.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, when somebody said something, I think it was Empire or something, where, like, what was it? They're like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy probably has something like 3 post-credit scenes, or Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is probably 3 credit scenes. And James Gunn was like proud on Twitter going, it's 5 actually. My response was, fuck you. I'm not even watching them. As soon as it finished, I got up and left, and people were like, but the post-credits. I was like, yeah, watch them on YouTube. There's 5 of them. I couldn't give a shit.
Not sitting there.
No, I'm not entertaining this bullshit. It was fine when you did one a film. It was a nice little kind of, oh cool, that's what your next nod to is. That's where the story's going. Doing 5, I'm like, no, fuck off, because 4 of these are going to be inconsequential. there's only going to be one that's going to tie into the next film, and I can just look it up on YouTube or Kotaku or whatever else, so I don't care. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it, because they're trying to go, here's our self-contained story, and it could end right now, and that's it, and and we never go back to this character. But here's the little cliffhanger. And it's like, no, fuck off. So yeah, what are your ones?
Mine was the Italian Job. That to me just is the penultimate. I had forgotten all about the little teaser yokes. I really like the one at the end of Batman Begins, the Joker card. I had forgotten all about that, and it's such a nice touch, and it harks. But that's the thing. It harks back to the 60s Batman. I'm sure they weren't directly referencing the 60s Batman, but every episode of that was like two guys tied to. What were they tied to? They were often tied to conveyor belts. Oh, that was it. There was one episode where they were being pulled into the machine that makes player pianos, and for some reason it's a giant 3-story machine that has to punch the notes into the sheet as it's going, and they're being pulled along like, how will the dynamic duo get out of this one?
And he has like a spray or something.
No, Batman whistles a tune that causes because it's music is playing and it's punching the music while it's listening to the music. So Batman whistles a tune that will cause the holes to be punched all around him rather than hit him.
Phenomenal.
Because
he whistles a Batman-shaped tune.
Yes, and then afterwards they fight the guys, and he holds up the sheet and it's a silhouette of Batman. It's so good. Oh, it's so camp and amazing.
But no, yeah, the little kind of Joker card. It's a really nice little kind of I like that. There will be like it's that whole implication. Like a cliffhanger should always be in my mind. It should always be there will be consequences to this, but it doesn't have to stop the story before you're finished telling it.
Yeah,
because it shouldn't be a case of the next one is a continuation of the story. The next one is this is the result of the story. This is a new story, but it has been influenced by what has come before. And that's it. Like, I mean, actually, yeah, that's another good example of it. I think is the recent Bond films with Daniel Craig.
Yes,
where there's a self-contained story in each film. Like I saw Casino Royale after I'd seen Quantum of Solace.
Yeah,
but I was still able to kind of like watch it and kind of like I was able to watch Quantum of Solace and go, okay, I know. Yeah, the other one was him basically starting out, and this is him like his kind of first big case after that. And I'm watching and going, cool, that's fine. I just for whatever reason hadn't got around to seeing Casino Royale. Then I went back and watched it. I went, cool, this is a self-contained story, and I can see how it ties into the other one, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be as kind of linked to it, and I like that.
There's another trope, I can't remember what it's called, but in kind of narrative theory, I think it's called the resurrection of Dracula or something like that. It's where the monster comes back for one more scare, and is it The Living Daylights? What's the Bond movie set in New Orleans, where they have Baron Samedi, and he's
Live and Let Die.
Oh, Live and Let Die. Sorry, with the greatest theme song of all.
Baron Samedi, come on.
Baron Samedi. And
but if it's Baron Samedi, it's Live and Let Die. It's the best one of the originals. Of the first like 20 odd, it was the best one.
Yeah, it's got the greatest intro where he's just playing the flute and he's like a normal looking dude, and Bond walks past him and he just goes, "It's going to be a beautiful day, yes sir, a beautiful day." And you're like, okay, that's the main henchman. Wow, weird. And he gets thrown into a coffin full of snakes at one point, but he comes back. He's just the very ending of that is a slow zoom in on him while he sits on the cowcatcher of a train laughing.
Yeah, laughing.
And I'm like,
that's brilliant.
Good. It's like the one Bond where
that's why everyone remembers him.
It's the one Bond where they go, fuck it, there's magic now. It's just, there's magic.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's I like, you know, it's they still told their story. They never had to have that scene at the end, but they just kind of wanted to, and it was fine. It was great, and everyone was kind of like, "Go." The most sterling example is Carrie with the hand coming out of the grave, where they just end on a jump scare. Like the last second is a jump scare. Yeah.
Of all the ones I mentioned, of the kind of famous ones of Butch Cassidy and the Italian Thelma and Louise and stuff, I don't consider those cliffhangers. I think they just is you don't get to see what happens. There's another kind of trope which is just like their deaths are left up to the imagination, and the most extreme example is Cabin in the Woods. Oh, we should have said spoilers obviously at the start of this episode. We're literally talking about the ends of shit.
No, but like actually, so going into spoiler territory, and I will try not to spoil it because I don't know if you've seen this film.
Go on.
But there is so you've seen The Witch?
Yes.
Have you seen Hereditary?
The VV itch.
Yes.
No, I haven't seen Hereditary. I'm going to see it this week.
Okay, so like there's a thing that A24 films are doing in their films, which I quite like, but at the same time is kind of, I could see why people would object. They do it in The Witch, and it is done in Hereditary, but this doesn't spoil anything for it. Where it hits a point towards the very end of the film where you think that's it, it's going to fade to black and that's it, but then it could, like, there's another scene where they're going to go like, no, we're not leaving this ambiguous, we're showing you what's happening. And that's I in a weird way I kind of like that, because a lot of films they kind of get to the end and like a lot of horror films they get to the end and go, oh, is it gonna happen or not? Oh, and they just leave it. And I think if it's done very well, then it's great, and if it's done shit, it's kind of cheesy. This one they're kind of they're kind of doing the same thing, but the other way where they're going, yeah, it could be ambiguous, but this is our actual ending. And there's a nice little kind of thing there. So I think you could actually, like, it's weird. The film has essentially two endpoints, maybe a minute and a half apart. Both of those films do, and it's like you could cut it at either point, and I think it's perfectly fine. And I think they did that partially for testing.
Yeah,
The Witch, where they showed it, and they get to that part where, you know, like it fades to black in The Witch, it fades to black, and then it comes out of the black, and you see Thomason walking into the woods to join the coven, and it's that whole thing of they could have just faded it to black and left it. So, but like I said, it's not. It's just something that A24 seem to like to do with their films, because they have a very specific thing that they're trying to tell with their stories. But at the same time, I can understand why it would annoy people as well. But I haven't heard anybody be annoyed by it. Anyone I've talked to has seen those films going, oh yeah, they were great, and that was it. Hereditary is one that I would recommend people go and see, and I recommend going and seeing it twice.
Friend of the show, Shauna, recommended it to me, and the way she convinced me to go see it was, she's like, there's very good crafting potential. They've got good patterns on the cushions and the doormats, and I was like, oh, absolutely, I will go 100%. Like a horror movie with notable patterns or wallpaper or carpeting, I'm like, absolutely, that's, I don't know why, but that's cranking my crank there. Let's do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Man, the use of carpet in The Shining can't be overstated. It's very very well done. There's a scene where Danny's playing with the ball, and the patterns are very famous hexagon patterns on the carpet, and he's moving it around, and then it cuts to another angle, and he's doing something with the ball, but he was following it like a maze with the ball, and then when it cuts, the pattern changes subtly, so that all of the openings are now closed, so he couldn't possibly have been following it like a maze, and it's really, really subtle. You'd never know that. I don't know why I noticed it. I think it was called out in some documentary. And I was like, that is absolutely genius. That is so good.
Probably.
But the
games.
Games, yeah.
Video games?
I don't have a notable tropable for that. It's not, cliffhangers don't really lend themselves well to games. We've talked previously about episodic games. I was talking about American McGee's Grimm, and how I was trying to play that episodically and just completely lost interest. And then they tried to do it again with The Walking Dead and stuff. I think we're hitting on a point here that anything that's an adaptation of a comic book seems to rely very, very heavily on cliffhangers, because it is such a
well, that's the format for comics.
Yeah,
is like, even if you know that a storyline has an arc of maybe 12 issues, so sometimes they will announce that they're not just ongoing. They're like, no, this is a 12-issue run. Or when you get issue 1, it has issue 1 of 6 on it.
Yeah.
And there will still be like a cliffhanger on, like, at the end of issue 3 and issue 4, or issue 3, issue 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like of the 6, and you're like, okay, cool, because it's just it's the feed to suspense.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's such an established thing that they know they can absolutely get it. In fact, I think it adds to it. I know that some of these are really, really cheap, but anything that's coming from comics, I do have one more notable trope I was going to do for TV shows, but I'll do it now, which is the marketing created cliffhanger when there is no cliffhanger. They're like, what cliffhanger? Yeah. Which is basically, if you're watching an ad or something, it's very like the teasers at the end of the post-credit scenes in Marvel, where it's like, next week on Supernatural, something will be revealed. And it like cuts to Dean looking at Sam going, you've got a dark secret. And it's like, he's like, but we're going to find out. And then they watch the episode and it's not in there. Like, they just completely made it up in marketing terms. I used to read Sonic the comic, and they used to do it on the cover.
Sure.
They used to have it in the covers. Yeah. And it'd be like this, like on the cover, you'd be looking at it, and it'd be like, Sonic finally marries Amy the Hedgehog, or Sonic is murdered, or something like that on the cover, and you'd be looking at it going, that can't be true. how dare he settle down? He's a bachelor. But and you'd buy the comic and read it, and like, no, he doesn't marry her. No, he doesn't get killed. Of course he doesn't. You're like, what? Reading it, going, why would you do that? That's such a ridiculous thing. But the not a cliffhanger that it's completely made out of marketing. And again, this is what we were kind of talking about. TV shows, they need to do it to get ratings at certain points. And it's such a weird thing of like, it is a completely marketing driven thing. But the idea that they would just make up a cliffhanger that doesn't actually exist. The Lost did it the whole time, where they were all the ads for Lost. This season something will be revealed.
Look, we've already established I can't fucking stand Lost.
I never watched it. You got the name of that show right. Yes. I couldn't follow the damn thing. But the Telltale games for The Walking Dead and stuff like that, they had that and just leaned into it, and apparently it was very popular. wasn't that big a fan. So the game I chose is Assassin's Creed 2, and Assassin's Creed is kind of notable for constantly having big reveals, constantly having stuff that's always happening. But the end of 2, I think at that stage they knew, it's like the movies, they knew they had a series on their hands, they knew they had an IP that they could kind of keep making games with. So it ends with Desmond in modern day going back and being Ezio and running around and doing those backflips, and then cuts to a modern day for the ending. And at a certain point, no, not yet. He meets a character who is like an angel, a techno angel. I'm describing this from like 6 years of memory, but it's one of the precursors. Yeah, it's so weird that honestly I didn't want to even watch it. I just wanted to give my weird memory of it, just because that they thought they give me this much credit. I'm going to give them this much credit of just like throwing a bunch of weird shit at me at once. But she looks directly into the camera and says, "Oh, I don't want to speak to you, Ezio. I want to speak through you." And presumably mean talking to Desmond, but she looks directly into the camera to speak to you. And I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing here? And she's like, you're going to have to fight. They're going to have to come for you. Everything like that. And I was like, okay, big reveal. They're going to end on the like, oh, you have to save the world. Your work is not yet done. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, that's a big kind of cliffhanger moment to end on. Then it cuts to the modern day with Desmond, and they're packing up all the shit, and the credits are rolling on the side. So this is, it's over. I was like, the Templars are coming. And like, oh shit, okay. And I was like, is the next game going to pick up in modern day? Like, is this be starting? And then
is this them launching into the modern?
And then Desmond starts fighting and doing this, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Well, there's the cliffhanger, and like it ends with the dude going, literally a dude peeling off in a truck, going, "This isn't over yet. I'll get you next time, Gadget." But that's cool. And then I remember the credits are still rolling, and then there's a voiceover, and the girl starts talking about an apocalypse. And she's like, if we're not careful, the polarity of the Earth could change and fling us all into space. And I'm like, what kind of a cliffhanger is this? Oh my god, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I was like, what?
Yeah,
I did not know what the next game was going to be, because I was like, so you've ended on 3 separate cliffhangers in 3 different time zones. It's either the past, the present, or cosmic timescale. And I don't understand what's happening.
The best way to enjoy the Assassin's Creed games is to pretend that the modern day stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's generally what I found. The past stuff is really interesting and is really well done, and they always build these beautiful locations that are a joy to just run around in and like, or even just walk through. Like in some of the early games, like when you just be like, you're in, like even in Assassin's Creed 1, I remember just in the city of Acre and like walking around through the crowd. It's like you have a mission on the far side of the city to go knife someone in the throat, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm just having a wander, and like, just I know that like even then, like, this is like 10 years ago. It's like they weren't doing a huge amount with the crowd at that time. Obviously the games have improved and upped that a lot, but like it was still enjoyable. It was still like that immersive thing, and I'm like, fine. And every so often someone goes, so what's that futuristic stuff about? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Don't worry about that.
I forgot there was a futuristic thing. I'm a pirate now. Right now. What's going on? Like,
yeah. So it was so jarring when they cut back to that. There's a bit where there's a girl and she's trying to tell you that she's an assassin, so she does the hand motion where she puts down her ring finger and stuff. And I was looking at her going, wait, what are we? And I was like, are you coming on to me? What are we doing? Why are you flashing the shocker right now? What's happening?
Yeah, it's like two in the pink.
But I love the
Are you giving the minivan?
the minivan.
Never mind. Let's go a little bit not safe for work right now. The minivan, which is that.
No, you
right?
you gotta build up to it. So you gotta do
It's 2 in the front, 5 in the rear.
Someone, I was telling someone about the Kit Kat as mentioned by the what do you call the guys doing the hilarity for charity stuff? Donald Gleason and Brendan Gleeson and his I don't know the wife's name.
Immaturity for charity.
And he's saying about fingering his wife, and she just leans in and goes, "That's the 4 fingers. That's the Kit Kat." And I said that to someone recently, and he just held up a fist. I went, "I prefer the Terry's chocolate orange myself."
I dropped the description of the minivan on someone in Eddie Rockets on Parnell Street one day, and he laughed so hard he fell. Anyway, moving on. So games. So you were talking about Assassin's Creed. Yeah. I get what you mean. Like that one was a bit of a mess. And like I said, the best way to enjoy those games is just to ignore the future stuff. Ignore even the precursor stuff. Just enjoy them for running around in a historical location. It's done with reasonable accuracy and just like dropping 6 stories off someone into like onto their shoulders and jam a knife in their throat. It's fine.
I really like the Penny Arcade thing where it's like, I was a pirate a minute ago, now you want me to work for Google? I don't understand what the pace of this game is.
Yeah, that was a bit of a busman's holiday for me when I was playing through that. It's like, oh look, I'm working in a game studio in this game that I'm playing in my free time from working in a game studio.
Wow, they have free vending machines.
They're kind of the ones that so it's just a kind of another example of the ones I was going to say was like I was saying about the bad middle child syndrome of trilogies. So just some prime examples of that are like Halo 2.
Yeah, so
Halo 2 has such a bad ending, but at the same time it's like, yeah, it was a great setup, but that's not where you should finish telling your fucking story.
So what is the Halo 2 ending? It was number 1 on a bunch of lists of cliffhangers in games.
So number 1 has the whole like, okay, so you trigger the Halo, you escape.
Right.
You get in the Pelican, the whole place is like blown up around you. You get in the Pelican, you fly the fuck out. Somehow Johnson gets out, but you're not sure how.
Han Solo comes in to give you a hand for a second and then flies off, I remember.
Yeah, so you get the fuck out of there. Grand. The second game starts off with you getting an award for your defense or whatever. So it's you and...
But Chewbacca doesn't get one. I remember. I remember all this, yeah.
Yeah, you and Johnson walking through the station, and then you get and he's talking to you, and he's like, "Yeah, maybe someday I'll tell you how I got off the ring." And so, like, a little nod, and you're like, "Okay, that's fine, that's cool." See, that's a nice little crossover. Yeah. That's a nice little connection. And the Johnson thing, most people didn't even know about because it only shows up if you finish Halo 1 on Legendary. When you finish it on Legendary, there's an extra cutscene outside the Pillar of Autumn where they're fighting each other. The Pillar of Autumn was the crash in, and they're fighting, and there's a load of Marines fighting a load of the Covenant, and then the Halo starts to activate, and Johnson turns to an elite and is just like, hold me, baby. And they go in for a hug, and then it all just kind of goes white. And then you're like, but then it's like they're on the thing, and he's like, the chief is grumbling about getting this medal, and Johnson's like, hey, just shut up and let him pin it on your armor. And he says, like, maybe if you're really good, I might tell you the story about how I got off that ring. And then something goes wrong, and like, oh my god, the Covenant are here, because the Covenant stumble across Earth. They don't realize it's the home of humanity. They're chasing a precursor thing, and they are Forerunners. Sorry, they're called the Forerunners. They're chasing a Forerunner thing, and they trace it back to Earth, and there's a whole big fight. And you go off and you go chasing them all around the galaxy, and you go to another Halo installation where you meet Gravemind, which is the sentient controlling intelligence of the Flood, and then there's and you're like, okay, but you're also playing half the storyline as the Arbiter, voiced by Keith David. And then there's like a whole big thing of like suddenly it's pointing everyone back towards Earth, and everyone starts kicking off back towards Earth. And then you board a Forerunner ship that the Covenant have captured and are using to transport to Earth. And you show up and you're like, okay, so we're gonna have a big battle above Earth, and that's gonna be the last battle. And he shows up, and all you hear is like, it's him, like the Master Chief is like, this is John 117. Is anyone in range? And you hear Lord Hood is Ron Perlman's like, it's like, Chief, what the hell are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here to finish this. And then the credits roll, and you're like, I'm sorry, what the fuck was that? Where's the... No, don't just tell me you're here to finish this and then like cut to black.
Yeah,
don't fucking no.
Oh, that's terrible.
Because they know I'm going to be waiting another 2 or 3 years for this fucking game. And it's I actually caused a slight panic in game on Grafton Street when that game came out, because I got it the night it came out. I got it at midnight. I cleared through the game. I went home, cleared through it. It's like a 5-hour campaign on the hardest difficulty. I did not have internet in my area at the time. I could not get broadband in the area in my time, so Xbox Live was useless to me, and I couldn't play the multiplayer. So I cleared the game 5 hours, and that's it. And that was the ending, and I was so pissed off. I went back into game the next day, and it's the official launch day, and there's a queue out the fucking door for people picking up their copy of Halo 2. And I walk up with my copy, and she's like, "Oh, you're buying a copy?" And he's like, "No, I'm here to return this." And everyone in the queue goes, "What?"
That's amazing.
And your one's like, "What?" And I was like, "I got this last night. I cleared the campaign on Legendary in 5.5 hours. I don't have internet in my area. This game has nothing else for me. I want my money back. There's my receipt."
Yeah.
And there's a 7-day refund thing, and I'm like, "I want my money back."
Yeah.
And she's shitting herself.
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
Like, but are you sure there's nothing we can do? I was like, "Unless you can run broadband into my house." Nope. And everyone in the queue was like, and they're all muttering and one another and all the rest. And I was like easily 60-70 people in the queue.
Did anyone actually kind of slowly step out, or were they that committed at that point?
No, there were suddenly people kind of like looking at the box in their hand and looking at the back of it and kind of turning to their mates and kind of, and that was kind of, and I was like, I don't care, I got my money left.
Yep.
But it was that was just such a shit ending. Another one I just wanted to mention was Dragon Age 2. But Dragon Age 2, again, they knew after the success of Dragon Age 1, they were like, okay, we're going for the trilogy.
Yep.
And Dragon Age 2 was shit. And then Dragon Age Inquisition came in. I like Dragon Age Inquisition a lot, but the entire point of Dragon Age 2 was to set up Dragon Age Inquisition.
Effort.
And you don't even realize when you play Dragon Age Inquisition until you're about halfway through. You get to the halfway point, and your playable character from Dragon Age 2 shows up and references that the bad guy that you're fighting in Dragon Age Inquisition was a guy mentioned in the DLC for Dragon Age 2. And it's all this one big setup. And I'm like, yeah, cool, that'd be great if Dragon Age 2 and all its DLC was just part of Dragon Age 1. So I get to go play all of Dragon Age 1 and then Dragon Age Inquisition and done.
Yep.
That would have been a great little 2-part game series, but, well, not little, they're about 100 hours each, but that was kind of a, yeah. Now, to flip that on its head, like I said, I finished Mankind Divided last night, the most recent Deus Ex game.
Yes.
And that is meant to be part of it.
You were streaming that. Let's do a plug for your stream. It's, what is it called?
Braxiven.
Pennyarcade.com.
Yes.
That's it.
Penny-arcade. No. Braxiven on Twitch. It's not that hard to find me. And I stream RPGs on the weekend. So I go through these story-related campaigns that people... Well, like that we hear us talking about. I go through a different one each weekend, or over the course of 2 or 3 weekends, depending how big they are. I'm probably going to go do Doom next, actually.
Oh, I really wanted to do Doom. Yes. I watched you play it one time over in the house, and it's like watching a roller coaster. And I was like, "Give me a go!" And I pick it up, and someone murdered me, and I hand it back to you. And I went, "Okay, I want to watch more."
But yeah, anyway, there was like the. I finished that, and it was my first time finishing that one. Now, I loved the original Deus Ex. The very first one came out in 2001. It's a masterpiece in gaming. It's a masterpiece RPG. It's a masterpiece in storytelling. And it is one of the best games ever made. It consistently is in the top 3 games of all time. Consistently. And I would highly recommend anyone who's even consider playing it, go back and get it. It costs like a stiff handshake on Steam. That's about it. And it is like, ignore the fact that the graphics look like ass, because the game is 17 years old. Yeah, it is a beautiful game.
It really is amazing.
But actually it's 18 years old. It's 18 years old this year. Wow. Sorry, it came out in 2000, and when it came out in 2000, the Statue of Liberty is blown up in the game at the very start.
Also, there's no Twin Towers in the background because they couldn't render.
And there's no Twin Towers in the background because they couldn't render them. And then a year later, and you're like, uh-oh. Yeah. But yeah, there's a whole thing where so a lot of people, then they did a reboot recently. Square Enix bought the license, and because the second one, Invisible War, came out maybe 3 years after the first one. Then there was nothing for about 10 years. Then they did Human Revolution. Human Revolution was very well received. It's a very good game. I finished streaming that like 2 weeks ago. It was a very good game. Really enjoyable. And like I've played through it a ton of times. It's just a super good game. And Adam Jensen as a character is basically just this surly, grumpy fool. Now in the second one, that as I was playing through, it was like kind of a new experience. I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And I'd heard that it was a very abrupt ending, and I heard that people were complaining that it was too short. So I went through. I did every side mission in the game, I listened to every conversation. I didn't just click through them. I was paying attention to what was going on. I liked the game. I thought it was very good. Adam Jensen comes off as a better character because he's had 2 years to adjust to this 2.5 years to adjust to the trauma of what happened to him.
While you're speaking, I'm going to have my arms folded and just look surly into the camera.
He has facial expressions in the new one. He raises the eyebrows. He looks skeptical. He smiles. He actually he emotes, and I'm like, this is good because the character is suddenly much more interesting.
Yeah.
As a playable character, and I can kind of understand it because it's the whole thing of when you're playing the first game, major traumatic event, 6 months recovering, basically having 4 of his limbs blown off,
5 actually,
and being that's unauthorized DLC, and then and it's this. There's a whole kind of thing of the anger at this trauma. And then his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend was kidnapped, and he was still in love with her, and he was trying to deal with all that, and there's this whole big kind of ball of rage and all this. And then when you see in this one, it's the end of the first one was 2 years previous, and he's had time to adjust. He's had time to get more kind of comfortable in his own synthetic skin. He is more he's dealing with it. Now, granted, when you're going around his apartment, there's bottles of alcohol everywhere, so maybe he's not dealing with it in the healthiest of ways.
I mean,
but at least
our similarities continue. Me and this Jensen dude, he's such a cool guy. I feel like I could play him.
Yeah, but it's it made the character more interesting. So you go through and I play through the storyline, and there's a self-contained story, and I get to the end, and it's wrapped up, and then there's a little bit of a kind of a, but now I want to meet this character. There's a guy who's who's helping him all the way through, but he refuses to meet him. He's like, no, look, either I go meet, or either he agrees to a meeting, or I find him. And usually, as the previous 2 games have demonstrated, when Adam Jensen has to find someone, it does not end well for that person. So he's just like, look, you either sort this or I go find him.
Yep.
And you're like, fine. And then the credits roll, and there's a mid-credit sequence where there's a little bit of it. Again, it works like the original Marvel ones, where it's and here's the breadcrumb to the next one. And you're like, cool, now I'm interested. And it actually didn't really, for me, it didn't suffer from middle child syndrome. They've already stated it's not dead. They're going to do another one. They're just waiting a while because there was 5 or 6 years between the first 2, and they're waiting again for the new one. So to me, it's just this whole thing of they're it's well crafted, it's well done, and it's a good kind of it's that whole thing of when I finished the game was 25 hours. I had 25 hours played, so I don't know what people were complaining it was short. But I finished it after 25 hours, and I was able to go, that had a lot of good stuff in it. It was enjoyable. The story was cohesive. There was branching paths, which is what you expect from Deus Ex. It's never just one linear storyline. It's there's multiple routes through the story, and depending on what you take, different people will live and die. And I felt yes, I have done well. And you know what I mean? So I think that was a good example, whereas Dragon Age 2, Halo 2, shite examples.
On the idea of games with branching stories and stuff like that, that means that by their very nature there will have to be cliffhangers that don't have a payoff. And the biggest one for me is I just never played Mass Effect 3. I think I started playing it, was like, I don't know what, something about this isn't doing it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I started in 2 that I just knew, probably hoped had to have a payoff in 3, and just never came back. And every so often I'll be playing a game and going, I wonder if the Rachni ever destroyed the universe. I have a save somewhere where that is a potential that could happen. I'm like, I wonder if that dude ever killed his father. There's so many. Go on.
Inquisition is one that you can actually. It's quite well done in that you can just pick it up if you've never played the previous Dragon Age Inquisition, because if you haven't played the previous, it lets you build your tapestry, and it's basically it's a really nice artistic tapestry where you go through and you make a load of decisions in game 1 and game 2. It's basically if you'd lost your save or you didn't have a carryover save, you can go back and fill it in, or you can just let it randomize it, or you can it'll ask you a few questions and fill it out based on it. So that it's not necessary to play the previous. And Inquisition's a decent game. I liked it. But it's weird. It's I would recommend everyone play that game simply for the play that game and make sure you put the bull in your party as soon as you can.
Yeah, you were saying about him on a previous episode. Because
the bull is probably one of my favourite computer game characters of all time, just in terms of how well written he is. Yeah. But anyway, gaming. Yeah, those are my ones. Have you any particular gaming ones that jump out, or is it just kind of?
No, I'm thinking about the writing of Sam Lake, the guy who did Max Payne and Alan Wake and things like that. He loves television and movies, and it comes across in the games. and there's lots of little moments of kind of not quite cliffhangers. Honestly, it always feels like you're resolving a cliffhanger anytime you're playing those games. You always feel like you've been thrown into this really crazy situation, and there's another trope is like, to be continued right now, and then like they keep going. Where like you, for Alan Wake in particular, he would do episode ends. So he'd have bring you to something really weird, and then do like a camera pull out, and it would show the streets are full of zombies, and then they would do like credits or something, or just something small for a minute, and play a song, and then go right back into the action. And like, what a weird thing to do. Like, you really, really want us to feel like, and do a little bit of recap of the story just before it gets back into the action. I was like, he really likes the TV serial style. He really let's do our drinking game and have me mention Twin Peaks. Like he's harking back to those days of the kind of melodrama of it all. So I like his writing style, and there was some of the stuff in Max Payne as well, where like you're going into these big mob conversations with mobsters and stuff, and then immediately it all ends in gunfire. I could see you could pick any point in that to be like, this is a really tense moment. And you're like, I know it's all going to kick off in a minute. There's no tension here. I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah, I just had to check something there because I always get him confused with David Cage.
Oh right.
David Cage is.
Yeah.
The guy who does he did Omicron, the Nomad Soul.
Yeah. Yep.
And he did Fahrenheit, and he did Heavy Rain.
Yep.
And he did Detroit Become Human. And every single one of his games I've played have been utter dog shit.
That's another dude who really, really wants to be making movies.
Yeah, but I don't think they'd even let him. Like his games,
So
I don't know. He's just I just every time I play one of his games, or I watch someone play one of his games, and something happens in it, and I'm just like, well, that was fucking stupid.
See, this is what I like Sam Lake, because he is not American, but he's writing American noir style or American kind of surreal style.
Fucking what you call it? Like David Cage is French.
He's French, is he? Well, I think Sam Lake
is Finnish.
He's Finnish or Nordic or something, and he's
Finnish.
But it's the same as the game No More Heroes, where it's somebody who didn't grow up in American culture but is like an outsider looking in, and basically they're holding it up there thing going, this is what you look like, and I was like, oh, you got so much wrong, but in the exact perfect way. I'm so happy.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it kind of upsets me. I'm just looking at the article here for David Cage, and it's like Warren Spector, game developer Warren Spector, described Cage as one of the best storytellers in the business, calling him a genius. That's really upsetting because Warren Spector is the guy who developed the Thief games, Deus Ex games, System Shock. Yeah. He worked on a load of the Ultima games, Wing Commander, and Epic Mickey. Ha! But just for all our Irish fucking. Yeah. Oh. But yeah, he's worked on all those things. He also worked on some of the DuckTales stuff. But yeah, it's just upsetting that he's like, yeah, he's a really good. He's a really good game designer and writer, and then he's praising this fucking hack as that's obviously personal opinions, but I just cannot stand David Cage's stuff. Every time, it's like, yeah, you're making another game, great, I don't care. I don't care. Oh, Detroit Become Human looks amazing. No, it really doesn't. But it's great. Have you not seen the trailer and the demo? Yeah, no. I didn't even have to watch them to know it wasn't going to be great. Do you know how? Because it has the name David Cage on it. And then the game comes out and everyone plays and kind of goes, it's kind of meh. And I'm like, oh, you fucking surprised? It's just fucking terrible. I'm sorry. And I know I shouldn't say this. I know a person working in the games industry as a game designer. I shouldn't badmouth other people because it's kind of not the done thing. It's like, well, you don't want to burn any bridges just in case. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I like games. I love games. Games are what I do. I'm passionate about games. If someone makes shit games, I'm going to call those games shit. Yep. If someone consistently makes shit games, I'm going to call the person making them shit. So
it's fair enough.
Whatever. So if and when I become desperate enough to apply for a job at Quantic Dream, and he goes looking me up on the internet, and he sees this. Hi David.
Thanks for
shit story.
Thanks for listening to all 23 preceding episodes in case we said something, and now it's finally.
No, probably just keyword
searched. The payoff.
You keyword searched. That's all it was.
So on TV shows then.
Anyway. What's your notable trope?
I used it already. It was the marketing one.
Okay.
I've already done that one. But TV shows, I grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard and 60s Batman and all these ones. The idea that they would do cliffhangers to fit the format to have ones before every ad break and then at the end of every episode. Usually, the 60s Batman wasn't too bad for... No, it was equally as bad. But it was literally the Duke boys ramping up something to get away from the cops, and then the classic line of, how are the Duke boys going to get out of this one? Cut to 2 or 3 ads, cut back, and they just, like, it looks like they're about to go into a lake. They just clear the lake, land on a dirt pile on the other side, and drive on. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. You've done it so many times that it's such a warming blanket at this stage of just they ramp up. If one time they went into the lake, I don't know what would happen. I would have freaked out. I was like, oh no. I was like, I guess we have to buy a new car now. What? But it is so pronounced in TV, and it's been for years. Do you want to do your TV one before I do mine?
Yeah, mine's just a very quick one. It's just a very good example of it because, like I said, normally you have the whole cliffhanger of probably the most prevalent one. And while I can't state specific examples, I have this recurring image in my head of end of season, cuts to black, gunshot, right? Just in so many things, in so many things. But the one that I kind of, like I said, I always prefer the cliffhanger where it goes, it shows you something, it wraps up the story, and then it says, but here's the consequence. Or there will be consequences from this. In TV, it's a little different where they go, we wrap up the story, and now we're going to leave you with a different mystery, and you have to try and figure out what that is. So for me, actually, a good example is the end of Sherlock season 2.
That's why I let you go first.
Welcome Back Fall.
Yes, I was absolutely convinced we were going to have the
same one. That was one of your ones?
Yep. So
okay, right.
Come on.
Yeah, because it's that whole thing of like at the very start, John Watson is talking with his counselor.
Yep.
You haven't seen since the start of season 1.
Yes.
And
I think
she's like, it's been 2 years. Why are you here? Or she's at 6 months or something. It's like it's been a amount of time. Why are you here?
He was fighting a dragon. I seem to remember. I'm totally on board with this. Let's keep going.
Yeah. That heroin addiction. No, it's opium. Chasing the dragon. That's right. But no, he's
still on brand for
and she's like, you know, why are you here? Like, what's happened? And he's like, and he has trouble saying it. And he's like, because my best friend Sherlock Holmes is dead. And the cliffhanger's at the start of the episode.
Yep.
And the cliffhanger then is built up to all the way through the episode, and people are like, but he said he's dead. And it's not this, that he didn't say he was dead in the kind of like, oh, we're just saying this to try and like cover for something. He's visibly emotionally distressed. It's the most amount of emotion he's shown the entire series, 2 seasons. Like, it's like, okay. And then it gets all the way up, and then you have the whole bit on the rooftop, and it's, like with Moriarty, and Moriarty kills himself and all the rest, and then you've got like him jumping.
Yes.
And then it cuts to like them in the, you have him running around seeing the body. Then you have him later at the gravesite with I'm not your landlady, with his landlady. No, but they're at the grave and they're talking, and she's like, oh, I'll leave you to it, and she walks off.
Yeah.
And then he leaves as well, and then it cuts over and Sherlock's standing in the distance watching them smiling.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, so that's a good cliffhanger, because now the cliffhanger isn't how did he die.
Yes.
That was the cliffhanger at the start of the episode. The cliffhanger is how did he not. And it's so many cliffhangers are, oh my god, was someone killed?
If anybody hasn't seen this,
it
is completely, perfectly, and very satisfactorily explained in the next season, and everybody's very happy about it.
But that's the thing, like, it becomes then that his return is not about, when he does come back, it's not about how he didn't die. He gives them an excuse, and then like, or he explains it to what's the cop's name? The forensic cop.
Oh yeah. That dude. But other people in the meantime
they all have their own ideas.
They'll give him a couple of ideas, and he kind of like. But at certain points, people pick a couple of holes in their ideas, and even the final explanation when somebody explains it, there's still a couple of raised eyebrows. Like, wait, a couple of those bits still don't make sense. He's like, moving on, and I love that they move on. I love that they don't like. It'd be a lot less interesting if we actually explained it. It's more interesting to not actually have the right answer.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and like it's. It becomes about, like, as he says when he comes back, it's not about, like, when they come back, it's not like how. when he comes back, Watson is like, why? Why did you do this
Yeah.
to me?
Yep.
And it's you know, he explains why and all the rest, but that's more important, and it's emotionally that's more important, and I actually prefer that. Whereas too many TV series, they would, oh my god, has someone been killed?
It's the
And then, you know, actually the one example I can think of that just pops to mind just there of cut to black gunshots is the end of season 1 of The West Wing.
West Wing, originally Dallas. Simpsons did the Who Shot Mr. Burns.
Yeah.
The Dallas one was the one where it was an absolute like media sensation. It became a phenomenon, and it was Who Shot JR. I was going to look it up and then just say who shot it. I don't think it matters.
It was a dream.
Oh yeah, it was a dream, but somebody shot him in the dream, and like when they came back, they just completely. There you go. That's your notable tropeable is the "it was all a dream" cliffhanger for TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
They do it so often, and then they start doing dreams within a dream with the double fake out and stuff like that. They really do love that.
Yeah, it's the like I said, it's normally like it is the gunshot and the to be continued, and that's it.
So they do this functionally exactly what you're talking about in The Walking Dead, where they had Negan say something like someone's going to die, and it's the culmination of end of a season trying to get people back and a marketing thing. This was 100% a marketing ploy, like, you know, someone will die. And he swings the bat and cut to black and someone's murdered and all the
it's all first person as well.
But then during the marketing campaign it showed a little bit more of the next season, and it showed Rick with blood on one side of his face, so everyone just went back and just saw who was to that side of Rick, and like, oh, so it's one of those two people, so it's pretty much those two people. Okay, we're good. And they figured it out before it actually aired. Like,
that's the thing, you got to be super careful with what you put out there
in
terms of like when you try and do these cliffhangers. But yeah, it's, I mean, like that's kind of why I like the Sherlock one, because it just goes against the normal cliffhanger method of a TV series, of essentially a crime TV series. Like, it goes against it in so many ways. It does the cliffhanger at the opening and then shows you
a book.
You know, like it reveals it all during the episode and then presents you with a different one, but
you
know what I mean, like a more positive one almost.
A bookend of two completely different cliffhangers is actually a really good thing for a Sherlock Holmes thing. It's like a mystery within a mystery.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
For my ones, I'll talk about then, if you've done Sherlock, which is the really, really good examples, I'll talk about kind of the ones that affected me the most. And I've spoken about it before on the show, but there's a TV show called Las Vegas that I really, really loved. I think it ran for like 5 seasons.
5 seasons, yeah.
With Josh Duhamel and James Lezier and Molly Sims and a bunch of James Caan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I genuinely think it was such a good format for being able to do any episode they want, because it's a set in a casino, so where literally anything can happen. Las Vegas, it's the craziest place in the world.
Oh yeah.
But it was clearly not making money. It was clearly not, like, a lot of people wouldn't have heard of it because it wasn't the most popular show in the world. So by the end of season 4 and season 5, they had to go bigger and bigger and bigger with these cliffhangers and mad stuff. And again, as you mentioned, they're often filming while they're trying to get renewed and trying to argue for.
They usually know by the mid-season break if they're getting a renewal or not.
They're trying to negotiate for a new season. So right up until filming the end of season 5, they were still negotiating for a season 6. They didn't know whether we were going to get a next one. So this is how it ends. This is how the whole show ends. They do a big wedding with 2 of the main characters, and then they have somebody runs in to stop the wedding bit like in the last 5 minutes. Then there's violence at the wedding. Gunshots start like going off. Somebody who's very heavily pregnant falls over, lands on the ground, holds up their hand, and there's blood. And you're like, oh my god, like they might have shot the pregnant lady. Like, this is crazy. They're trying to get as many cliffhangers as they can. And then in the last second cuts to somebody who's not at the wedding flying an airplane. And then suddenly all the lights start flashing, Mayday, and the plane starts going down. And it cuts to black. And I'm like, how many cliffhangers did you just put in? And I watched this on DVD way after the show was over. And I knew that this was the last season. I knew that it had never been picked up again. So I was watching that last episode going, no, guys, no.
just wrap it up.
You could
let someone get married and go off into the sunset.
I was like, it's such a good send off for a show like Las Vegas where they have to go out all flashy and what's the thing? All sound and fury. They have to absolutely be as ridiculous as possible just to their very end. I was like, I'm just, all it would take is one more episode to wrap this up. Just, if they got a special or something, I would be so happy. And I was like, I don't know why it makes me happy that they went out on the craziest bid to get another season that they could possibly do.
Yeah, it's like Battlestar kind of had that happen to them as well, where they were in a constant cycle of you're cancelled. Oh wait, no you're not. Oh, you're cancelled. Oh wait, no you're not. So, they kept on being told this was the last season, and then halfway through the season they'd be told no, it's not. So they had to suddenly fucking switch the story. But they managed to actually like weave their way through that. So it's a tough one. Like
the one that absolutely affected me the most was there's an anime show called Berserk. We don't really talk about anime that much on this show.
Good El Gatsu.
Yeah. Oh man, it was so good. It's such a ridiculously good. It is. If you are a fan of the Dark Souls video game series, you'd like this anime.
If you're a fan of Dark Souls, or if you ever thought that Cloud Strife sword in Final Fantasy VII, well, it wasn't quite big enough, then Berserk is for you.
It's like an angry kid who gets brought into a band of mercenaries. It's set kind of medieval Europe, so he starts training with a big Berserk sword. I didn't do that on purpose.
8 foot long?
Yeah. No, but he starts training with a normal sized two-handed sword, but while he's a child. So he then, as he gets older, just keeps making bigger and bigger swords, so that by the time he's an adult,
it's like he's used to a certain weight and a certain like size compared to his reach and stuff like this.
So
yeah.
At the very, very first episode, they start with bookend. They start with like this is the end of time, end of days, and it's Gatsu, but he's missing an eye and he's missing a hand, and the hand he's had ripped off, he's had now replaced with a cannon. So he can.
No. So it's hang on. Let's describe this correctly. He has a wooden hand.
Yes.
That has a crossbow attached to the back of it that he can wind and it'll fire multiple shots.
Yes.
But the entire hand can hinge down at the wrist, and he has a single shot cannon inside.
Yes, and it shows him as now a wandering killer, assassin, mercenary by himself. He's
mercenary.
Yeah,
he's Clint Eastwood.
Yes,
that's the thing.
And
he's the man with no name.
Beat the fuck out of, destroyed, beaten down. Through the series, you see like it flashes back to when he had both hands and both eyes, and shows his origin and him coming up. And he joins the Band of the Hawk, which is this mercenary group that has kind of designs on seizing power and led by kind of a charismatic leader. So that first episode, it shows him the end. Like, so that's my cliffhanger. I know that at some point he's going to lose an eye, lose a hand, all this kind of stuff. And we'll see how he becomes the man with no name. But then cut right back to childhood and go through the whole story. And then the end. Which, now, I know that this is a manga, I know that there's a book, I know that it continues past this, but the end of the TV series, if you ever want to watch it, they just go to hell. They literally go into a hell dimension where his eye is ripped out and his hand is cut off, and everyone is killed, including him. He is just, completely killed, and then the show's over. And I'm like going, wait, what? Wait. It really, really affected me, and I was like looking up online, going, "So is there a new season? Is that a cliffhanger? Does he come back?" He's like, "Nope, that's everything wrapped up." I'm like, "Okay, wait, what?" Oh, 18-year-old me was so freaked out.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, but I didn't know you were allowed to do that in media. I didn't know you were allowed to set something up, bring it to the end, and go, and then he died in hell. I'm like, okay, thank you. Wait, what? It was. I'm sure. I'm sure it continues. I'm sure he gets back from hell somehow. But as a self-contained unit, that is such a powerful way to.
Well, no, the original season was 25 episodes. Mm-hmm. That was it. Now they have done a. What do you call it? There was a.
Whatever they're called.
No, there was a reboot done recently.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, 2016 or 2017, they did a 2-season reboot.
Oh, nice. Well,
which is actually quite good.
I'll have a look for that.
I think Crunchyroll has it. So,
but it is a weird example where the actual reveal, I guess, the actual resolution, is even more fucked up than the cliffhanger. But yes, I like that one. That was the one that kind of struck me. I'll also give a shout out. We never really. You still there?
Yeah, man.
Not quite for a second.
Sorry, no.
I need the validation. I'll give a shout out to Rick and Morty when they did the first episode of season 3, where they do a reverse cliffhanger fake out, where at the end of season 2, Rick allows himself to be captured by functionally the intergalactic police and is going to be put in prison and will no longer be able to adventure. And then the start of season 3 is him literally sitting in a Denny's or something being like, and that's how I escaped intergalactic prison. Moving on. And then over the course of the episode it's revealed he's still in prison, and he knows he's still in prison, and he knows that they're just trying to get information out of him. But it's a really nice reversal of the kind of way it's usually played for comedy.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I think it's quite well done.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that's everything. Or is it? Wait, there's someone outside. Wait, what are you doing here? Cut to black. Cliffhanger.
There's someone who has been on an episode before, but I can't describe them or use the pronoun that would allow us to be able to gender them. No, get back! Get back! Cool. And on that, the homework, the only note I made was you mentioned as a throwaway line there about Hollywood math. I would love to do an episode, even a little special somewhere in the future, about Hollywood math and the kind of behind the scenes.
Hollywood accounting.
It might be a little bit of a research heavy one for us, but I love...
Return of the Jedi made no money.
Return of the Jedi made no money. All the Peter Jackson kind of made no money. I'd love to talk about Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all of Adam Sandler's movies. I love the way he makes movies. I'm never going to watch one. But the idea that he can just take his friends on holiday, the kind of Ocean's 11s did a little bit. And I'd love to talk about Uwe Boll and the way he makes movies and the way it is completely just a tax scam. But it's so, like, I'm so interested in it. So he buys the rights to a video game, takes 10 million off one of his friends, or 2 million off one of his friends, makes a movie where they make back exactly 2 million, and all the companies he uses to pay for it just funnel the money back to whoever it was. So whoever it was basically gets 2 million, and instead of losing any money on tax, they get everything funneled back and keep everything, and Uwe Boll gets to make a movie.
No, but I'm sure he gets a cut of it.
I'm
sure like that 2 million, he gets like half of it. And then the other guy's made $1 million, he's made $1 million, and the guy didn't have to pay tax on anything.
Yeah, it is a way. Yeah, it's like when a DJ shows up and wants to use his own equipment, and then you have to rent the equipment off the DJ. Uwe Boll has all the production side of stuff. He pays to make sure the money goes right back to himself. Yeah. I'd be so interested in doing that. Cool. Other than that, watch Sherlock, watch The Italian Job. Yeah. Don't play. If you play Assassin's Creed, ignore everything that isn't assassinating.
Yeah, if you're not wearing a white hood and you're in an era before electricity, just ignore it.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to their KKK episode based on that description.
Ooh, hang on a minute.
Cool. All right, have fun, guys.